Russia's battlefield losses in Ukraine have eliminated the military advantages it once held over NATO allies in the Baltic region, a new think tank report says. Russia has effectively lost its position of power and the capacity to threaten its neighbors with projections of military power, Pavel Bayev wrote in a November report for the French Institute of International Relations. Bayev, a longtime Russia expert whose work included a stint at a research institute inside the Soviet Union's defense ministry, argues many Western policy planners haven't grasped the long-term implications of what the war in Ukraine means for security in the Baltics. While some in the West see Russia's weakened position as transitional and a Russian comeback inevitable, Moscow sees the loss of its conventional military edge in the Baltics as both unacceptable and irreversible, Bayev said. The Baltic nations of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania were annexed by the Soviet Union during World War II. Since becoming independent in the 1990s, their forces always have been far smaller and less developed than Russia's. However, they have welcomed training with U.S. troops and other NATO allies, which are required to collectively defend the Baltic nations if they are attacked, in line with the alliance's treaty. Russia's war in Ukraine has taken an extreme toll on its military and challenges its ability to maintain a large force on its western flank with NATO, the report said. The study argues that Moscow's strategic goal of turning its military exclave of Kaliningrad into a launching pad to dominate the central part of the Baltic region has effectively been cancelled. Moreover, Ukraine's ability to target Russian military infrastructure around Crimea has exposed weaknesses in Russia's coastal defense weapon systems. Those vulnerabilities also apply to the Russian military along the Baltic coast. Beyond the tactical weaknesses, Russian capabilities were compromised as assets moved to the warfront. Many of the Baltic units tasked with guarding Russia's western border with NATO countries have been decimated during the nearly 2 years of fighting in Ukraine, according to the report, which cites a lengthy list of damaged units. Whatever the scope of the outcome of the war, Russia will not be able to rebuild a position of military superiority in the Baltic theater, or even to set an approximate balance of forces with NATO, which is implementing a new plan to strengthen its posture in this reconfigured direction, Bayev said. Moscow could be forced to rely more on long-range missiles and talk up its nuclear capability for deterrence purposes, to make up for its conventional military disadvantages. Plain strategic logic dictates that weakness of conventional forces necessitates greater reliance on nuclear capabilities, and the Baltic theater may see applications of this logic, the report says. Regardless of the outcome of the war, Russia also will need to position forces along its southern border with Ukraine for the long haul, the report says. For years, the Baltics have been a focal point for the American-led NATO alliance, which has strengthened its position in the region amid concerns that it was outgunned by Russia. Many of the alliance's changes were prompted by Russia's initial 2014 intervention in Ukraine, which shattered old post-Cold War assumptions about a more secure Europe. In the years before 2014, many NATO militaries drastically reduced defense spending, shrunk the sizes of their militaries, and regarded the prospect of large-scale conflict on the European continent as an anachronism. The U.S. military also sharply scaled back on the continent, removing the last of its battle tanks from Europe just months before Russia's annexation of Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula. The diminished NATO force prompted angst among security analysts at the time. Those concerns were reinforced by a large war game carried out by the Rand Corps, think tank with the assistance of numerous American military commands between 2014 and 2015. It found a Russian offensive in the Baltics would overwhelm lesser-armed alliance forces and seize the Estonian and Latvian capitals in a matter of hours. The Rand war game, which garnered much attention at the time, said the outcome was, bluntly, a disaster for NATO. Since then, NATO has added multinational battle groups in the Baltics and Poland and ramped up rotations of other combat forces in the region, including U.S. Army tank units. That, along with the addition of Finland into NATO and eventually Sweden, tipped the balance in the Baltics to NATO's favor, Bayev said. With the accession of Finland and Sweden to NATO, the Baltic theater is reconfigured so profoundly to Russia's disadvantage that no amount of effort could make Fortress Kaliningrad defensible, the report said. And the German Bild posted an exclusive story that the USA and Germany want to persuade or force Ukraine to enter into negotiations with Russia by means of targeted arms deliveries. Ukraine will continue to be supplied with new weapons, but in the quality and quantity that is sufficient to roughly hold the current front. President Zelensky will not be put under verbal pressure to negotiate by either Olaf Scholz or Joe Biden, but should come to the realization himself that a military victory against Russia is impossible. The USA and Germany have this power because no other country can provide relevant weapons for a possible successful Ukrainian counteroffensive, or wants to. If this is true, then hard times are coming for Ukraine guys. Russia is discussing construction of an underwater tunnel that would connect Russia and temporarily occupied Crimea with the help of private Chinese companies. This would allow it to have a transportation route for weapons, ammunition, and other military supplies that would be protected against Ukrainian attacks. Communications intercepted by Ukrainian security services via Washington Post. Intercepted emails indicate that one of China's largest construction companies is willing to participate in the project. This is one more indicator that Putin is ready for a protracted war. Measures must be taken for him to fail at that. Faces of freedom defenders. Don't stop believing in them. Write a support message to them.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you want to support Warthog Defense, please become our member and get early access to new videos, exclusive members-only videos, and become administrator in comment section. The membership link is in the description.
Rescues every day. We had a guy last week at 6 rescues in 6 days. He's doing the job every day.